My name is Rocio Campbell. I am a nurse practitioner here at Shell Point, and I've been a nurse practitioner here for about 2 years almost. I've been at Shell Point for 9 years. I started back in 2008 as a licensed practical nurse in the 3rd floor of the pavilion. And through my career here, I've become a registered nurse. And then I went back and got my bachelor's at the University of South Florida. And once I finished that program, I started my master's program at the University of South Florida while still working here. I love it here. So I'm here in the medical center a few days a week, but I also go out to the Springs and the Arbor 2 days a week, and I see residents in their apartments. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be an FBI agent, and my brother was in the military and he was gone, and so I was raised by a single mom, and I didn't want to leave her and go away to school, and so she wanted me to go to nursing school, and I told her I would try it for 2 weeks, and here we are 16 years later. I grew up in Miami. I'm Cuban and I was born in Cuba, but I grew up in Miami, and I was in Miami when I was a year old. So I've never gone back to Cuba, but I moved here to go to school. So I went to LPN school, which is licensed practical nurse. Maybe it took a year and a half, 2 years. After that, it took me about 4 years to get into RN school. And so the RN program was another 2 years, and that's an associate's degree. So I was able to achieve that, pass my state test. I worked here as an RN for about 5 years, and during that time, while working as an MDS coordinator on the 1st floor, that's when I was working on my bachelor's, and I quickly got into my master's program. And that was another 2 years of clinicals and more nursing classes. So about a year and a half into it, I started talking to our medical director about how much I wanted to stay here once I finished nurse practitioner school. And that's something that he was aware, and human resources was aware. And so once I finished, they knew and saw me progress along. So they knew when I was graduating and what the timeline would be, and they always said, we would love to have you stay as a nurse practitioner. It's just that the position has to be available, and everything fell into place, and it was. So I passed my exam, if I remember correctly, April 12th, and it was a Wednesday, and I started as a nurse practitioner the following Monday, because I had had my interview as a nurse practitioner way before I finished school. So they had it in the works. As soon as I passed my boards, I called and I said I passed, and they said, you start Monday. The difference between an RN and a nurse practitioner, at least for me, was that the amount of responsibility you have, where now you're diagnosing and prescribing medications and diagnosing with different diseases and whatnot. But what I love is that I'm never alone. So the doctors that surround me and the other nurse practitioners that surround me are here to guide me. So that's another reason I wanted to stay here, because sometimes you don't get that where you work. So Shell Point has been helping me out for a while. At first, when I was working on my bachelor's, they had the tuition reimbursement from the auxiliary, and I was able to apply for that while I was doing my bachelor's, and that was extremely helpful, and it was easy, and I would just send them my grades at the end of the semester, and then they would reimburse my tuition. Soon after I started my master's, the scholarship program started here at Shell Point, and again, the scholarships are all through residents who are willing to give and get us through. So I was able to get a few scholarships here while I was in my master's program, which helped a lot because your master's tuition is a lot of money. So the first scholarship I received was from a resident who was in the 4th floor. And she had told her husband years ago that she wanted to do something for nursing and help people along. She had an amazing story. She was one of the first nurse practitioners ever in the United States. And so I was able to meet her and her husband. And so I was grateful. You know, my colleagues around me were praying as well. I even had some residents praying for me every time they saw me, you know, throughout the program. So I do think it was all in God's hands and God's plan. You know, sometimes we say, oh, make a plan and God will laugh at it, but He didn't this time. He really worked with me and made it happen.